All right, everyone, welcome back to Energy 101. Today we have Austin Draughon from Radial Flow, and today we're having our offshore episode, finally.
Offshore 101.
Offshore 101, kind of. I will probably go into the weeds with other things, but I mean, good old comparing the offshore to the onshore. I always say onshore. Is that right? What do you, land? Rigs?
Yeah, onshore. Well, it's funny, if you're in onshore, people don't say onshore. It's only something for somebody in offshore to distinguish the other thing because they're different.
Onshore.
Yeah, onshore folks, like if you're in West Texas, you're not going to say I'm in onshore.
I'm onshore in West Texas.
Exactly.
It's kind of funny.
Okay, so what's up, man? What are you doing?
I run a technology company consultancy called Radial Flow, but I was at BP for 9 years. And most of the time I was Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America.
Shout out.
Is it official Gulf of America?
Yeah. No, Bessie, the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement, which is the government agency that oversees it, changed, like the day after, changed their name on the website, on the official government website, to Gulf of America. I was impressed by how fast it got changed.
The real
One time.
The real time it switches when Google Maps switched it. That's the official way.
It's officially on Google Maps.
Yeah, I think it is. But
Anyway.
back then it was Gulf of Mexico, back in the old days.
Gulf of America.
Gulf of America, yeah. And so I worked, I was a production engineer in the Houston office, but I was supporting different offshore rigs. And so that meant I had to go out there and spend a bunch of time on the rigs and like look at stuff and meet people and see how it all works. And then I just sort of stayed there for like the next, 8 years or whatever. So my career was really all offshore and the particular things that go on there. I did a little onshore in Alaska.
No big deal.
Yeah, that was a different animal.
Did you go to North Slope?
Yeah, I've been to the slope, spent some time up there.
How cold was it? What month was it when you went?
Every month is December up there. What are you talking about?
It's funny. In the summer, it was like kind of hot. It was like you could wear, a t-shirt or whatever.
And wasn't the sun shining the whole entire?
Never goes down. It like dips kind of low, but then just keeps
crazy.
Going
Did
around.
it throw off your sleep?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, all the rooms have like heavy blinds that you can pull down, so you could still get some sleep. But yeah, it was pretty. You could definitely tell like it would be like we were back in Anchorage, like it'd be midnight and you're still talking, hanging out, and you forget that it was like, hey, it's probably time to go lay down.
Yeah, that's screwy.
That's so crazy. But it wasn't cold when you went?
Well, on the North Slope, I went also in the fall, and that was not nearly the worst of it. I mean, I was like a wimp, and so it was, I don't know, maybe like
I would have died.
20 and blowing or something. Not snowing, but I was very cold. And
Did you have all the gear?
Yeah, they give you some stuff. I had it's like this fleece and then this heavy parka thing over.
Yeah.
There's a special winter gear you have to keep in your truck in case your truck stops working and you get caught in a snowstorm. Like you'll die in 24 hours or 36 hours or something.
What is it?
No, it's like that.
Oh, it's a suit?
Like this, special parka thing so that they can get to you in time, to like save you from dying of
You literally
cold.
duck and cover until
I think I'll stay in
hopefully
Texas.
survive.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, it was
Freezing to death.
pretty cool. The darkness thing in the night was the weirdest. It was like living on the moon. It was like you would wake up in the dark, go to work, and then when the sun would come up while you were in the office, right? It would be up for like 3 or 4 hours and would go down. So you would come home in the dark and it's like, 0 degrees or
How
something.
long were you there?
I was there for a full year. It was like a training thing to learn onshore.
So you were there for like all the seasons?
Yes. Yeah. We moved up there for the year, my wife and I, and then our daughter was born there.
Oh, crazy.
It's actually a funny story. My daughter, my first, was born there, but I was too. So my dad worked for BP on the slope, 30 years before then.
That's so funny.
So I went up and someone was like, you're like the salmon who like go back to their home to spawn and lay eggs and then come back. It was like I had to go back to my home to have our baby or whatever.
That's funny. Did you have more kids?
Yeah.
And you didn't go back?
No, all the other, I have 3 more. So I have 4 and they're all born here in Texas.
Oh, well, it'd been a cool story if you would have moved back.
For each one, yeah. That would have
Also,
been
I'm pretty
intense.
sure salmon, when they swim up and lay their eggs, they die.
That's what I was going to say. Do they die?
Yeah,
When you said that.
Not the best analogy, but
Glad you didn't die.
I lived.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a close call.
the salmon that lived.
So, okay. what is like the day in the life of a production engineer? Like, what do you, when you say you were here in Houston as a production engineer, but you would have to go offshore. Like, what does that look like? If you're not on the rig offshore, what does your job entail here?
So it's like a oil and gas well. It is different. So like this is one of the things that's quite different with onshore and offshore. There'll be similarities, but this is going to be one of the distinguishing factors. The offshore wells we only had a few of them, like for comparison, right? So like an offshore well, we maybe operated, like I was sort of in charge of like 12 of them. Whereas an onshore is typical, you might have 100 or, I had more than 100 in Alaska, and then you could have 1,000, way more. But if one of those wells, especially when I was on Thunder Horse, like if one of those wells went offline, and we didn't know why or be able to account for it within 6 hours, it was like the VP or the CEO or whatever was like wanting to find out, like, this well is offline. It makes, 30,000 barrels of oil per day, the one single well. Why is it offline? When is it coming back? So a production engineer's job was to think about every well and what is it making right now, or like what level is it flowing at? Is it the right level for that well? And if it's not at that level, like, how do we close that gap and get it back up? And the point was you had to have like 100% awareness of all your wells and all your production, because it was like the production was the very revenue that the company was running on.
Right.
And
which
offshore,
is stressful.
The wells had tons of problems. They would have a lot of challenges and problems. And there was like sneaky things that would kind of creep up slowly on a well and then like, bam, just knock it down. So like you would have, I don't know, we're going to get too technical or anything.
No, I love it. Let's get technical. We'll ask you to explain if it's way over our head.
So like a big problem is the oil that you're getting out is can have something called asphaltene in it, which is actually like a gummy solid, like asphalt. It's like sticky, but it's tricky because it sometimes wants to stay as a liquid and it'll flow no problem. But under certain conditions, it'll want to, they say, drop out or like become a sticky liquid or sticky solid, and it'll like block off the inner walls of the pipe. But not totally. It'll just sort of begin to coat.
Like builds up like calcium in a drain.
Exactly, yeah. And then all of a sudden you could just have like a glob come up and just bam, shut off the well. And if you could, there's some stuff you could do, but if you could get it back in time, maybe you could save the well. But if you couldn't, then you had to get a rig. I mean, you were going to tell your manager, like, we just lost this well. It's 10,000 barrels of oil per day. We think it's going to be down for 4 months. And we are going to get a rig, but we have to break in the rig schedule and do a xylene wash. Xylene's an organic solvent that can basically push the asphaltene back into solution.
Drano, got it.
And and then you normally flush it out, and then you got the well back, right? So like that is one particular problem that you might have. But we used to joke like that a 10,000 barrel per day well was like normal, and it was something like the state of Montana's energy consumption or whatever, or like a big city or something. It was just like an enormous amount of energy that was going to be offline for a while because of these problems. So we would try to build, like I was on a team that was really working on technology, because there's very subtle indicators as to that particular thing happening. You want to look for like certain signs in the pressure signals, but it's not like you can just look at the pressure trend and see it. You have to like calculate something and divide by something, and then you might see like this little line starting to creep its way up. And like that was the thing we were looking for. So I built a lot of technology there that was designed to look for and target those things and then tell us beforehand so that we could maybe shut the well down preemptively, do a easy small thing to it to save it, and then prevent that bad thing from happening.
Yeah. How long ago was it that you started working on?
I started in 2016.
Okay. And then, so over the years, over the past 10 years, have you seen technology really like just blow up?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Big time.
Yeah.
Well, I think particularly in, like, I remember early on, if you wanted to do something difficult or calculate something difficult, it was an Excel spreadsheet was like the only option you had. You had to download the data on your computer and then open Excel, and you could, use Excel and do little formulas in the cells and drag them down. And it was very manual. It was very like a lot of work for one thing, like trying to answer one question for one well. And as time went on, like I remember, this is super nerdy, but I remember the day that you could write a Python script, but it was deployed in the cloud on the production environment, which is important because otherwise you still would have had to download chunks of data and like run these scripts locally and find some small answer. We could actually take the script and put it in the cloud next to where the data is and just say, hey, every hour,
It's like real time.
Pull stuff in, run the calc and output the value. And maybe I had the value say like no issue, potential issue, or high, certainly an issue, right? And then we every day would have a dashboard then that would always be updating. And you could just look at the dashboard and have all the wells and it would have like no issue, no issue, no issue, maybe an issue. And when we got to do stuff like that and calculate stuff and put it in dashboards that are real time and automatic, I remember on the, it's like on the 21st floor of Westlake or something, we had these TV screens and they were supposed to show like the lunch menu or something. And the 21st floor is like where all the reservoir development team sat. Yeah. And I convinced my manager that we should be able to like use it on a rotating thing so the screen would change. And we put the dashboard, the production dashboard on one of these like food menu screens.
That's awesome.
And people loved it. Yeah. Because people would like stand there and stare at it and like everyone wanted to know.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I had a big thing for like the data should be totally available, clear, free, like easy to look at. Like it shouldn't be hidden, hard to get to. It should be like out there, you know?
Yeah. Data is definitely an issue for all companies. So that's awesome that you were able to do that. I have kind of a dumb question.
Me too.
Okay. So when I think of offshore, I just think of the rigs. I think of offshore drilling. What is is it just a platform when it's just like the well's actually in production, you're not servicing it or anything or whatever? Is it just a platform out there?
These are great questions. Let's get into it. There's really two worlds even in offshore. You got onshore, offshore. Then in offshore, there's two worlds. You've got the shelf is what it's called. So you have the continental shelf is where the Gulf of, think of the coastline extending out a few hundred miles. And then there is this big drop off. It's called like the Sigsbee escarpment or something. There's this huge drop off and the water depths get dramatically deeper, all of a sudden. So in the shelf was all of your old, like they've been doing offshore stuff since like the 30s, there's very old shelf platforms that are still operating. Shelf wells are normally typically smaller production numbers, it's like a in between onshore and offshore. Offshore past the shelf, they call Deepwater. Mm-hmm. And Deepwater is actually a technical term. It's more than like 6,000 feet deep or something. But the point is like, if you think about it, your bigger pools of oil are probably harder to get to because all of the easy close stuff was probably been depleted. So as technology and exploration improve, you're sort of scanning further and further out there. And you end up with things like Deepwater. There's something called ultra Deepwater, which is like 10,000 feet or something. But yeah, then the question is like, well, they used to build like a common shelf platform would have been a jackup rig. So a jackup rig, you can still see them sometimes if you go to like Galveston. Mm-hmm. They have these large towers that have those crisscrossing thing on them. What those towers are is they would float this thing like a barge out, and it's only like 100 feet of water, so you only need a 130-foot tower. They'd lower those towers down, and then actually at the end, the barge would actually climb up the tower, and the barge would become a platform and would like be situated there. It's touching the seafloor. Mm-hmm. For offshore, there's no way you're going to touch the seafloor. So what they do instead is they build either a spar or a semi-submersible. And in similar cases, but like a spar is a tall, think like a can of soda or something. And you can imagine that, okay, let's say you're in a pool, right? And you have like a can, it's empty, so it's filled with air. And imagine if you had a wire from the bottom of that can to the bottom of the pool, and there's like a small, loop or something on the bottom of the pool. If you like tug it a little bit, that wire, and it actually pulls the can down under the surface of the water a little bit, like a buoy. The can is pretty well situated and won't move too much. That's exactly how a buoy is made. It's like more buoyant, but it's pulled down a little. And so it'll stay pretty much right there.
Yeah.
So they're doing the same thing with spar and semi-sub. Semi-sub, they actually sink the bottom part of it. They fill it up with water, so it'll actually sit in the water. But the point is, like, you need these opposing buoyancy forces, and then you can have a structure that's pretty solidly, like, stays right there.
Do they actually put like pipe then?
Well, so then they'll run anchor chains, and they'll run like...
Because they can't move or the pipe will like go. Is there a pipe?
Yeah, we'll get to the pipes.
It moves in the water, I believe we learned.
Yeah.
It's meant to take the resistance of the water.
Okay, we'll keep going with it.
But yeah, wait, as you finish this thought, let me just say, like me, like 5 years ago, is thinking that, like, I understand there's drilling rigs all the way out in the water, like not like on a shelf, but like deep water, right? And I would assume like 5,000 feet, whatever. 5 years ago, Jacob is thinking like, okay, there's a structure. There's probably like 4 pillars on each side, so it stands. I'm thinking there's a 6,000 pillar, 6,000 like of concrete or whatever. It's like, how the fuck do you even do that? It's like, no, it's they thought of a way around that, and it is floating essentially.
Yeah,
like 1 billion tons of whatever just floating and not moving around, making you seasick somehow. Get in all that.
Yeah. You still, I mean, so it depends on like how big the structure is or exactly how it's positioned, but everything will roll with the sea. So like if a storm comes in, you know, that thing is going to be heaving, and you'll see like chairs in the control room like sliding around, and the operators are like used to it. They're not even they're not even bothered by it. The rest of us are like getting seasick. But you do have like maybe a drilling rig or a drill ship might have dynamic positioning, which is a bunch of little turbines on the bottom and a bunch of GPS signals.
I was about to ask that
are helping. They're like constantly, you know, puffing little turbine spins to keep it exactly where it's supposed to be. But those are susceptible if you lose the GPS positioning and you get too far outside the pipe, right? We'll talk about the pipe, but there's a problem, and you're like, we're out of position with where we're moored to on the ground. We're going to have a problem if we don't do something.
Will it break?
Yeah, it depends. So how you get a pipe to connect from this floating thing to like what's down there, right?
Sand.
Sharks.
Yeah, all the starfish. Yeah, that's all true. But way down there is the seabed, right? And the seabed is like kind of not dense, like muddy sand, you know. And way below that, like 10,000 feet further down, is the oil that you're trying to get to. So what you typically need is you're going to definitely need a riser. And a riser is a big piece of pipe that's going to run from somewhere where it's going to connect to the floating platform and all the way down to the wellhead where it's going to connect to a well. Or it could connect to, very nerdy, but a PLET, a pipeline end terminal, or a manifold. But you typically are, well, let's say you've got your drill ships, your drilling rigs, and your production facilities. So let's say that you, let's pretend we're like wildcatting, right? Offshore wildcatting, which is pretty cool. So our geologist has told us he's gone elephant hunting, which means they're looking for like massive giant, because it has to justify like a $30 billion platform.
Right.
So we need like, there's pools of oil out there, you know, that we know of, but it has to be enormous to be able to, for us to like go to investors.
An investment,
say,
yeah.
We're going to spend $30 billion on a new platform. So let's say we find something and we want to wildcat it. We want to put an exploration well. We're going to hire a drill ship. The drill ship's going to like park over that spot using GPS. And then they're going to lower first the riser. Their riser is these pipes in joints, just like on an onshore rig. But they're first going to have to build this riser and slowly run all the way down. And then on the seafloor, they're going to need their BOP. And then inside of that riser pipe, there's an internal space. Then they're going to run their drill pipe, and then they're going to start drilling down into the mud, the seafloor below there, trying to get all the way down.
What is BOP?
BOP is a blowout preventer.
Okay.
And these, the term became more famous after Deepwater Horizon because the BOP famously malfunctioned. But it has like 5 or 6 different ways that you might shut off flow that you're not expecting.
So that's sitting at the bottom?
Yeah, you deploy this BOP to the seabed. You have to sink it. They test it, I think, every 2 weeks. You have to haul it back up. Some rigs that have 2 BOP, they're giant. They're like, I don't know, 20 feet wide and like 40 or 50 feet tall. And it's like a school bus turned sideways. And they sink this BOP, and then they have to hook it all up. They deploy these robots, these big like yellow and white robots with these little hands that go in and like
So cool.
tighten stuff, turn stuff, attach pipes and stuff, check stuff, test stuff. And then you would drill your well, you know. And that part's interesting. It's similar in many ways to like drilling the onshore. You just have to account for the riser. So you drill your well and you run casing. You're going to cement the casing, you test the casing, and then when you're ready, you're going to flow the well. So then what you have to do is you have your wellhead. You're going to have to close your wellhead. So you have this pipe then of the casing string, or maybe if you completed the well, you run tubing inside of it. But then let's say you finish all that work and your well is like tested, ready to go. We were successful in our exploration. So we got to make the oil, right? How are we going to produce the well? Well, because that well would be called a subsea well. It's different from, I realize it's kind of complicated. You have offshore wells that, if you can imagine, each have their own riser. So like a particular platform might have 16 slots in the well bay, and they've run 16 individual risers. They don't have to go straight down. It might be like a little bit octopus and land on different spots in the seabed. But then those are going down further to the different spots of the reservoir where it really does look like an octopus draining from different parts of the reservoir. But that'd be called dry tree, because top of the well is where you put the Christmas tree, called a Christmas tree because the first flanges and valves go out wider and then less wide, so you end up with this Christmas tree shaped thing. It's funny, the offshore ones don't look anymore like Christmas trees, but that name carried over, and so everyone calls it a tree.
Yeah.
But if the tree is on the seafloor, it's like 100 times more expensive and more complicated to operate. Or the tree is on your platform, so that's your dry tree and your wet tree or subsea tree. So like in our case, if we wildcatted our well, and let's say that there's no platform above our new well, so we're going to have to tie it back to something. This is where things get interesting, because I might, there's cases where you have like a platform like 5 miles away over there, but the well is so strong and profitable that we're going to lay a 5-mile flow line just for this well from here all the way over there. And it's going to go up and it's going to connect to that production facility. And we're going to pay like a lease for them to operate our well. And they're going to run control lines all the way back 5 miles out so they can control the well from over there. And so you end up with these very fascinating, wild, arrangements where you've got a production facility with some wells under it, and then like way over there is a well, and then way over there are 2 wells, and there's something called subsea loops, which we don't have to get into, but that's a good start.
It's a lot, yeah.
I'm visualizing
I know,
70% of that.
I know, me too.
All right, so I still have like a lot of questions around just this basic stuff. So a few things come to mind, like, so we've been learning this last year that, the on-land drilling has really gotten fast, like from exploring, being like, let's poke a hole, drill, suck it out, and cap it. Like they're doing that in like less than a month, right? We're here like 3 or 4 weeks, something like that. So what's that time frame on offshore?
Oh, years, decades.
Realistically, like the modern, like, let's poke a hole right now and start. Like, what are we looking at?
Your typical, so it depends. In most cases, what you're actually doing is they drill what are called the top holes. So let's say our exploration well is successful. And what that really means is we kind of know through some science how big the reservoir is, how much oil there is. And let's say like we throw a big party because it's huge and we like did it, and the investors, we build the platform and we now have a dedicated production platform. And we are ready to drill 12 producing wells and 2 water injectors, right? To like operate this facility. Well, the facility is going to have to operate for like 40 years to get all that oil out, because there's a lot of oil there. And what that typically means is we're like, all right, well, we're going to drill 12 wells. It's actually cheaper if we get a rig and just drill the top part that's pretty straight 12 times. So imagine like 12 empty slots that are holes in the ground. And when we're done with those, we can then kind of get a sometimes it's the same rig, but we can do very specialty technical things about exactly we're going to go down, and then we're going to actually turn, kind of like horizontal drilling, but or just generally called directional drilling. We're going to go for like a very specific spot of this reservoir so that all 12 of these little offtake points are like perfect. They're in just the right spot where the best oil is. We're going to have 2 water injectors that are in just the right spot to like push or sweep all the oil up, you know. So you might, your top holes are shorter, maybe like 30, 60 days, somewhere in there. But then your reservoir target section might take longer. So like could take, another 30, 60 days. But then your completion could take 90 days. So overall, the process takes much longer. And you're typically looking at like to drill an offshore well. I don't know. It depends wildly on the completion type or like different problems, but it could be 90 million kind of on the low side to like 150 million on the high side. But we generally thought about like 90 days, you know. But then the rig schedule, there's only like 3 or 4 available rigs in the whole Gulf, or maybe that we had access to. So we were always waiting. Like we knew there was a cool new well we wanted to add that we were getting later, but we had to wait till 18 months before the rig could come around and do that work.
That's interesting. I didn't think about it from that perspective.
Yes,
basically being service.
It's different that you couldn't just like call up a rig and have somebody out in a much shorter time frame.
Right.
You normally are signing very long contracts. And typically the reason it's like, they always said like it's offshore, it's 10 times more expensive. It's going to take 10 times longer. There's going to be 10 times more people involved with it because the risks are so much higher, both kind of like health, safety, and environment, and financial risk of something going not right is both pretty bad.
Right. How much automation is out there now? Like, is it a lot? Like, is it automated? Like in drilling offshore, is it automated?
I think it's gotten better. I mean, you can definitely say that offshore drill ships. Also, one thing is drilling and completions was not my forte. I was more on the production side. But typically, the highest level of technology and sophistication you would find in an offshore rig. Like if it exists, they're probably using it or trying to use it because things are so high risk. Like they want the best stuff.
Right. So production wise, like what is your job when you go out there? Like what are you?
So
when you were out there, did you have to stay out there for like weeks, or like what was your kind of schedule like?
So we normally, like, let's say like all that office stuff I was doing, normally what's the result of all that work is, okay, to know what's going on with the wells, but ultimately you're trying to do something to them, like change, every well typically had a set point for how much it's allowed to flow. This is another aspect, but like some of the wells were powerful enough that they could actually blow apart their own completion. If you just like let them flow full open, they would actually collapse and fill with sand because the rock was not strong enough, or the flow was too high, or you're going to rip through the sand screen with high gas rate or something. So what that meant was we were always like setting the set point and then watching it very closely. And if we felt like we needed to change that or actually shut a well down to like do some maintenance or some work on it, we were communicating with offshore. So these are the folks that worked on the facilities. You normally had the captain or the person in charge of a facility is called OIM. That is a Coast Guard term, I believe, for offshore installation manager. But it's just very clear, like this is the person that's in charge of all the 350 souls on this vessel. And then from there, you had your superintendent, or you had your production supervisor, and then you had your operators. So the operators are typically the people that I would be working with like multiple times a week, or we had like, calls twice a week, or I would be texting them or calling them or talking to them. And normally like the control room operators and the operations production engineers were trying to be super in sync on like what's going on with the wells, what's going wrong. They would call me in the middle of the night and be like, hey, this well is doing a weird thing. We're not sure. Can you take a look? And I'd open my laptop, take a look at it, and be like, let's leave it and see what happens in 6 hours, that sort of thing. It's pretty typical.
Get some sleep.
Yeah.
You said like 300 souls so there's hundreds of people in a rig?
Yeah. Well, they're all different sizes. They all have a different like POB limit, personnel on board. but it's like a hard rule, again, like a Coast Guard limitation of like, you are not allowed to have more than 120 or 210 people on this vessel.
I mean, my first thought is I've shot all kinds of stuff on like drilling rigs on land, and there's like 5 people there doing all the work. Like what are these hundreds of more people doing that to compare offshore?
Yeah, like I think Thunder Horse is the biggest. At one time, it was like the biggest production facility in the world. I think
is Thunder Horse a rig or a basin, or what is that?
Thunder Horse is the name of an offshore production facility, and it was one that I supported for a long time, and it's like near and dear to my heart. Working Thunder Horse, it was
somewhere in the Gulf.
It's in the Gulf of America. I think it's the Mississippi Canyon. If you're familiar with the block names, numbers, and all that, but it's I think it's the biggest by POB by head count. It's like this giant big thing, and it actually had two had a double derrick, and it had an entire drilling and completion side to it and an entire production side of it. So the drilling side was run by the well site leader, and then the OIM was sort of the captain of the vessel. But we had like painting crews, maintenance crews.
Let's say you have food.
We had cooks. We had
chefs.
Chefs. Well, let's talk about the actual work. Let's talk about the actual workers, because if you go to an on land site, you got a driller in a doghouse. You got 2 or 3 roughnecks out tripping pipe. Some dude's like spraying with a hose, cleaning something. Like I see this every time. And like, let's add on like 2 more people. Like that's not even 10 people. So like, what are the actual and these are all like people with hard hats working. So like, how many workers are on doing something?
Yeah, I would say, well, keep in mind, you're going to have like a day crew and a night crew, right? So already you've got sort of half and half. But you would have, I think a lot of the same stuff there. But imagine that a lot of the part of it where you're like fixing or cleaning or working on something that you could see is sort of being done by this whole subsea team. And the subsea team maybe are like they had this like ROV as a remote operated vehicle. Those are the robots that went down and fiddled with stuff. We might have like 2 ROV shacks, these little air-conditioned cabins that you would go in, and they had, 2 or 3 operators controlling the robots.
VR goggles or?
No, they just had a screen up, but VR would be cool. They did have a very cool, it was like this gyroscopic like mouse pen thing. It was like a copy of the robot's arm, but in a little physical model, and you could like very carefully adjust this thing, and the robot arm would do the same thing.
That's crazy.
Literally playing video games.
It's so cool.
So I think, you would, to your point, you kind of see maybe a little bit less on the deck. There's still definitely like, mud pumps and, sacks of barite back there somewhere. But a lot of the stuff that's happening, all the interesting stuff is going to be happening on like video screens from feeds of what's going on at the seafloor, or it's happening still in the doghouse. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that like, the top execs, the CEOs are keeping an eye on these offshore rigs because they're probably their biggest assets, right? Compared to all the onshore stuff. So why are the offshore stuff much bigger than onshore? I mean, obviously it's this big rig in the middle of the ocean with all this room to drill, but it's like, so are some of these rigs on land are like in the middle of like nowhere, Midland. Why aren't they operating so huge? Like they're only getting like 1,000 barrels a day compared to tens of thousands. Like why is it a bigger deal on offshore?
Yeah, I think it's because of like the general sense of risk and what's going on is a big aspect. But it's a funny, like it's a rule, right? That if there is a deep water facility that exists and is producing, the only way that could have worked that way is if there was a ton of high productivity oil that would have supported that capital investment. So typically a deep water asset has already like passed through all of these trials and stages that it gets to exist as this extremely profitable, high productive asset that you're normally like watching super closely. But then, I mean, it depends. Like, there's still higher producing onshore wells, but it could be like, you still have wells, in West Texas that are making like, a few hundred barrels a day, if that, maybe less than 100 barrels per day. I think the term stripper well was a well that was like less than 50 barrels a day or 20 or something super low. And your offshore wells are going to be making, so like if a stripper well makes 10 barrels per day, we're making 1,000 times more than that with an offshore well. So like 1,000 stripper wells, or a field of them, right, over many miles would correspond to one well that we have in the facility. Maybe we have 16 wells.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to put in all that effort. You might as well go big.
Well,
right?
you have to. It's capital.
Yeah.
Like it has to have an ROI.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like it's so expensive to operate. It wouldn't be worth it if it didn't have enough.
You said something funny. It made me laugh quietly. There's like deep water, and then you said it was like super deep.
Ultra deep.
Ultra
water,
deep. This stupid ass name. But it is funny. Like, obviously, it's like technology gets better. We get to go deeper, right? Like literally, we're on a shelf. You said in the 20s and 30s because it's like right there, right? But then we learned how to go deeper. Now we're going ultra deep. Like, what are we doing? Go inside of trenches or just like the actual deepest part of the oceans? Like, what is the actual challenge and what technology has gotten better to help us do that, basically? Do you know?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say I describe it like this. Like when you think of a steel pipe, right? Like we're talking about a casing or production string of drilling a well. We think of a steel pipe like, wow, that's very, you're just drilling, a straight line from A to B. We've got a solid straight steel pipe, just like run it in there. What's the problem? The point is that if you think of like maybe a thinner, like think of a PVC pipe, at Home Depot or whatever, like a 10-foot PVC pipe. And if you grab the middle of it and you like wiggled it, that thing is super wobbly. It's like spaghetti, Well, steel has the same sort of flexible behavior over a very long span. So we're actually like trying to like push spaghetti down like 4 miles away, trying to hit a like 4 foot by 4 foot target. And
seems impossible.
These guys nail it every time. Like it's incredible. That aspect of technology, like the feedback that you're getting at the doghouse to be able to control exactly where the end of that pipe is going and getting it just right spot. So when you're going ultra deep water, let's say going 6,000 feet to 10,000, that's 4,000 more feet. That's another mile you've got to cover. So your flexibility problem is way harder. It's even more difficult. And then there's various challenges on the production side of like, there's a big problem with a special kind of ice called a hydrate. So the seabed is the bottom of the ocean floor is 32 degrees, and it can't get any colder than that because obviously it would freeze and ice floats. So it can only ever stay at 32. But at 32, it's very common for methane that's mixed in with a little bit of water. The water forms this special kind of nasty ice called a hydrate. And it's really like forming an ice crystal. If you think of like water ice as a crystal, but because of the position of the gas, it forms like this bigger, nastier, like sticky crystal called a hydrate. And so that's a huge problem where if you've got, let's say we have our 4 mile long flow line on the seabed, it cannot get cold. If it gets cold, the whole thing will freeze up and it's gone. And you have to wait 24 months to lay a new, 6-inch line that's 5 miles long from A to B. So we're like constantly monitoring for the temperature of the well. Is it, if there's a problem and we shut down the rig, we can't produce, then that well's offline and it's on like a 8-hour clock before it's dead, right? So we're like scrambling to try to figure out what happened to the rig. Can we start the well? Can we turn on a pump and just like circulate fluid to get some warm fluid back in there? Like these are the sorts of things we're worrying about. And as the technology gets better, we're going after deeper and more difficult to reach places in the ocean is what's adding to the challenge, making it so much harder.
Damn. Is like the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America, like the easiest place to tap in? Because they're off. They have the North Sea up by like the UK. They have They have the rigs off the Perth in Australia. They're in Guyana right now. Is there like geographically like it just looks like water, right? So it's like, is there a difference depending where you are on the Earth when it comes to offshore?
I've heard some crazy things about the North Sea in terms of like the winter storms they get up there.
They get like waves from like movies, basically, right? They get like crazy 100-foot waves and shit.
Waves with like ice on the top, like flying over. And
oh my God.
If you went over in the helicopter on the North Sea, you had to wear a dry suit, which is like next level above a wetsuit, because if your helicopter crashed, you were going to freeze and die in the water in so many hours or whatever. I think
it's terrifying. Have you been offshore since having kids?
Yeah, I did go off. I would go offshore to support. We did a lot of flowback support. So like our Drano problem. Like if our well had an issue, we had to go do Drano. There's another challenge. The Drano was heavier than the oil is, right? Like oil floats on water. This Drano stuff is mostly water, is heavier. And sometimes the Drano was like plugging the well. And so you had to like flow the Drano out. And then when you flow the Drano out of the well through this equipment on the production facility, it would like things would break. There would be more problems. So the production engineers would go offshore to support a flowback, and you'd have to sit out there for like 10 days while they're flowing back the well. And you had to watch, at each time, like what was going on and tell the operators and that sort of thing. But I did do I remember doing the helicopter training. Have you heard about
Hewitt.
this? Yeah. Have you done it?
No, I really want to. We've talked about this so many times on the podcast.
Vlog, like a Mr. Beast video.
I know.
We can make.
No, Colin worked offshore, so I was introduced through him through all of that. But the reason I asked that is because when he had to go offshore, I would get so much anxiety because I'm like, actually the first time he went offshore was like my first emergency with the kids, and my son had dropped a weight on his finger. He was like 2, and he dropped a weight, and it his finger was split in half, and I was freaking out. And anyway, I can imagine if something else happened, I would have been freaking out. But were you ever scared?
I think with my wife, we didn't focus on it and talk about it all the time, that
Right.
you would be, because the thing that bothered me the most was that you'd be in the helicopter. And I mean, it's not quite as high as an airplane, but it's way up there. And if an airplane loses power, it's designed, it could just sort of glide, right? And it's scary, but it could glide down and make a landing.
Helicopters.
The Rock.
Helicopters will fall down.
And they're so dangerous. There's so many stories you hear about helicopters.
There's stories. They talk about it in the helicopter lands and the blades are still turning. When it turns sideways, the blades will hit the water and explode. Stuff like that. But yeah, we did this Hewitt thing. So you go to this normal looking conference center area, and it's just sort of 4 hours of PowerPoint presentations. And you're just taking notes wow, this is cool. This is great. I'm so interested in this. And then you're all right, now we got to go get our wetsuits on and go over to the pool.
The YMCA.
The YMCA pool. And you go over there, they got this giant metal contraption hanging over the water, and there's 4 guys in scuba suits that are down there.
Did you survive?
I lived. I did it. And then you clip you in this thing, and they dunk you in the water. This thing turns upside down, and you have to get out. It's because
Fear factor.
well, because that there were maybe one or multiple accidents where the helicopter crashed, but nobody knew how to get out, and they figured out they always turn over for some reason, and people were not getting out of the aircraft fast enough, and they were dying. I think it was they were dying, and it could have been preventable by just training on how you
get out.
Yeah, get out of the helicopter. So that was the whole point. What was it? It was index, locate, elbow through or something. There was a thing you had to remember, and it was about finding your seatbelt, undoing the 5-point harness, finding the window, then pushing out the bottom corner with your elbow.
What if you aren't strong enough?
And then, I don't, they never, everybody did it. Everybody got there, even people who were pretty nervous. You could tell before the thing went down, you could see who's going to struggle. And there'd be somebody like that with the scuba diver was helping them up.
Yeah.
They make everybody,
die.
make everybody run it back until we got everybody to pass.
Wow, dark ending. Well, this was your first podcast, so congrats or whatever. That was a really good overview of generic offshore. There's obviously we can go deep into a lot of that stuff, but why don't we wrap it up with just what's in the future? What technology can we expect? AI, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, good question. Well, yeah, I think that's sort of the things I'm focusing on now is in my business is I'm trying to help surface those same questions, right? The whole thing boils down to, I think I operate on the belief that actually a lot of people are very competent with what they're doing and are seriously working very hard to do a good job. And all we have to do if we're the technology people is surface or make available to them what they already care about. I just think about so often people are like me, trying to find, how I'm going to like, where did I pay how am I going to find the guy who came to fix the electrical outlet right in the garage? Like, I'm like, where was he? What's his number? And I'm like standing there like a caveman, trying to like remember there was this guy Zelle, was he Venmo? Did he email me? And I'm having a hard time surfacing what should be like a very basic and easy part of the thing I'm trying to do. So along that very simple rubric, like that's all I try to do now. It's like make it very easy for people to go actually do the thing they were trying to do and get rid of all the clutter that blocks us from, our goals. So I find that if you operate like you believe that people know what they want and they are pretty clear on like the steps they would take to accomplish something, but they're just stuck at like finding the thing or everything's a mess, then really just trying to like surface all that for them. I think AI is really good at that. I've noticed one thing that it's really good at is the many to one, right? Like your lawyer sends you like a 35-page document to review. What are you going to do? You're going to Control A, Control V, paste it in ChatGPT. You're going to ask it the question you had in mind, like, what happens exactly if I don't pay the guy on time or whatever? And it's going to tell you like, oh, well, you run this risk or do this, or you can say like, does this look normal, whatever. So it's taking this 35 pages and you're adding your little like focus thing. And what you're just trying to get out of it is like the single one or two sentences that would actually answer your question. So taking like a large volume of things and just giving you the one thing that you wanted, it's like that shaped problem is really, really good at that. So I also there's this thing I'm working on now called a narrative layer, which is where I want to compute like these properties or mechanics or like the pieces that are important to resolve. Like, is this well going to have this problem or that problem, or how many days until this thing happens? I want to calculate that. So do like the hard calculations are fixed, right? So I got the number because I don't want the AI to just sort of guess at those tricky things, but I don't want that number to get buried. And so the narrative layer is where you would just feed to the AI model like a bunch of different of these statistics with that prompt of like, do any of these look out of spec for what we're expecting? And then the AI does a great job, summarizes that, gives a sentence out, and you put that in front of people and they go wild. They love it.
Yep. We see the same thing at Collide, and it's the best use case for AI, making all these industries, especially important ones like energy, efficient, safer, better. So doing good work. Anything else?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, join us next time for a more in-depth offshore experience, because you can imagine there's a lot more rabbit holes to go down.
So many rabbit holes.
Austin, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you guys.